Hello. Nice to see you all. Wish we got to be in person, but now we are all really good at Zoom. Probably we know Zoom a little bit better than we did 1 year ago when we had our first supporters briefing. And Claire, shall we go ahead? Okay. So just so you know, this is being recorded, and if you don't speak up in any of this, then you probably will not be recorded. And we will not be recording any of the small group or breakout times, just so you know. So just to start with some introductions. My name is Hillary Bergen. I use she and her pronouns. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts at Beacon Hill Friends meeting. And I'm the executive director of Quaker Voluntary Service. And I would love for my fellow facilitators and tech host to introduce themselves. So maybe Allison next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Letts. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and I am the board clerk. Damon, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Damon Mott-Story. I prefer they, them pronouns, and I'm the assistant clerk of the board of directors of QVS. And I'm in Northeast Portland, Oregon, which is where I served in 2016 to 17. These are the traditional lands of the Multnomah, Kalapuya, and bands of the Chinook tribe, among other native peoples.
Hi, everyone. So good to see so many faces I recognize. My name is Claire Hannapel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm QVS's development director, and I'll be your tech host tonight. I am an alum of the Atlanta program, and I am so excited to be with you.
So to just do a little bit more reminding of Zoom, as I said, this is being recorded, and additionally, there is closed captioning that I think should be available to you, and I will turn it over to Allison.
Yeah, so we have closed captioning available. It might say live captions, it might say closed captioning. It's in the bottom of your screen. And if you have any other logistical questions during the event, definitely message us in the chat, and Claire will do her best. Our tech hosts will do their best to assist you. Tonight, we're going to be going over some of the numbers that make up our community and our impact. And our hope is that you all leave the event with a deeper understanding about the stories behind the numbers. So we're going to start with part one. We're going to review 2020 to 2021. And then we're going to go into the bigger picture. And then we'll talk about our community. So we will get to hear from fellows tonight. We have 3 fellow testimonials, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their stories. So let's start with the review of 2020 to 2021. There were 36 fellowship positions. We had 36 young adults in the fellowship last year, and that's across all 5 of our cities. So Atlanta, Boston, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Philadelphia, and Portland, Oregon. Each city has 6 to 8 young adults living in a house together. When I was one of the fellows in Atlanta the very first year, and so we had 7 people living in a house together, and it's been such a joy to see new houses spring up and have that same kind of size of community that's not super big, so that we can build community across 5 cities. And we do have 33 site placements for 2020 to 2021. And almost half of those, 14, were new site placements. For folks who don't know, every year fellows are matched with a local nonprofit. That's a site placement, that's what we call them, where they work during their QVS year. And Unsurprisingly, one of the challenges of the past year was that fellows had different work situations and different expectations. There were some fellows who were able to work completely from home, some were all in person, and some were in a hybrid approach. So there were a lot of new negotiations as the house became a work setting too. There was also COVID precautions involved in the year, both for fellows in person as well as kind of what that looked like as a house. And for next year, we have 21 returning site placements, which is more typical for us. So that's going to be 64% of our site placements are returning. And then, as you might know, we are partnered with 17 Friends meetings and churches across our 5 cities. As many of us experienced this year, spiritual relationship building is challenging during a pandemic. Many friends shared that they didn't.
Bill Holland is on the.
Hi, Bill. Many friends shared that they didn't get to know fellows as much as they might have in years past, and fellows shared similarly. This makes a lot of sense to us. We do know that some fellows struggled with worshiping over Zoom, and as Quakers, we know that God and Spirit show up for us outside of our Sunday worship time at a meeting house. This year especially, we as Quakers needed to lean into this. So while it didn't look the way that it has in the past, these 17 Friends meetings and churches have been part of our community for many years now. They have the uniquely wonderful and challenging position of getting to know each cohort of fellows. And regardless of how deep the relationships are for local friends, fellows' spiritual journeys are deeply impacted by the local meetings and churches that we partner with, whether or not we can immediately see it. Though you may not see it, spiritual exploration is emphasized throughout our program, not just at worship on Sunday mornings. So we do a few things that I want to highlight. We pair each fellow with a spiritual nurturer who provides spiritual accompaniment during the year. So we had 35 spiritual nurturers this year. Early in the year, fellows learn about clerking and Quaker decision-making process, and throughout the year, they use them in their weekly house meeting for business. We also have a weekly worship for fellows who are worshiping as part of the house community. And during programming days, fellows learn about and use clearness committees. And then there are also the retreats that offer fellows time to slow down and be in community. We're now going to hear from our 3 fellows. Christina, would you start out with your story?
Hello, can everybody hear me? All right, my name is Christina. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I am a current fellow in Portland. I'm wearing a mask because I am still at my site placement because it is still my work day and I have been working in person all year. My QVS story, I think, is very much, well, it has a lot of differences than I would say the average QVS fellow. I'm actually going to take this off. I joined the QVS program at 28 years old, which is well above the median age of all of my housemates, and I think a lot of the folks in houses this year. I decided to become a part of QVS purely because of a feeling. I found out about Quakerism when I was about 26 and immediately became enamored with the spirituality and the process behind Quakerism. I remember watching an informational video about it, and about halfway through started uncontrollably crying. It was a feeling that I had never really experienced before in my life. I started attending the San Jose Friends meeting, which is the oldest Friends meeting in California, where I became acquainted with a man named Rick Martinson, who passed away during my QVS year. He was my first true spiritual nurturer in the Quaker community, and was one of the very first group of spiritual nurturers in Atlanta, where he was originally from. They did not tell me about QVS. I was just doing research on Quakerism, and upon stumbling upon the QVS page, I instantly felt the spirit in my soul tell me that this was something I had to do. I looked through all of the site placements and knew before I even had any idea where I would want to live that my site placement that I am at now is where I am supposed to be. And it turns out, here I am. It has been a unusual journey for me. I have elderly parents that I left in California. A lot of my family and friends are still there. I came here not really knowing much of anybody. And to be quite honest, I have had lots of different experiences since moving here, including a complete ego death, if you will, that has really shaped me and put me on a trajectory for my future life. Since following the spirit and moving here, many things in my long-term life are going to and have changed. I have decided to stay in Portland. My family is moving to Portland. I am going to be staying at my site placement. I am on a waiting list to receive my dream internship with the only woman that I have ever found that has done what I want to do with my life here in Portland. I have developed this community of people that I'm going to be living with in the next year. I'm going to go to school at PSU. I also made the executive decision to join, to be part of the first group of young adults to join Pacific Yearly Meeting in California without joining a monthly meeting. There were 6 of us, and we really paved the way for that to happen. Oh yes, Portland State University. My life has completely changed since following the spirit. I, in no way, have been perfect in following all parts of the program. I know my spiritual nurturer is on here, and I am so sorry that I have not spoken to you in a while. It's been a year for me, but I am so thankful that I did. And I am so thankful that I had the opportunity to have such a life-altering, transformative, spiritual growth of an experience, even if I am about 5 or 6 years older than a lot of our fellows. Quaker Voluntary Service has changed my life. It has made me a stronger person. It has made me a better friend. And I think that the things that I have done this year are going to change my life permanently. So I'm very thankful to be here. And I am so thankful to this program. And I am very thankful to Rick for encouraging me to do it, even though he's not here anymore. So thank you. I believe we're going to Katie next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Houlihan. I use she, her pronouns, and I am currently living in the Philadelphia QVS household, and I work at Fleischer Art Memorial, and I'm going to be talking about community and spaciousness. I think when other people think of community, they sort of have these preconceived ideas of what that's supposed to look like, but living in community and being in community is like being a part of a living thing. And there are different ways that we have to show up for ourselves and for each other in unexpected ways. Reflecting on a time of conflict that we had in a house, there was a period where we felt broken beyond repair. Like there was something fundamentally like wrong going on. It was this really pervasive feeling that we had once felt such a closeness or this really unique bond that now felt broken. And in searching within ourselves and within each other, we were able to find a lot of a lot of unconventional ways of healing. We were presented with the 4 stages of community, which are pseudo community, chaos, emptiness, and true community. And we were overwhelmingly in the empty phase during this period. After being in pseudo community, where you're sort of saving face and smiling and nodding to keep peace, there's a moment where that peace is broken and there is chaos and people feel blindsided or like they've been lied to, or that something was missing where they thought something had been before. And in emptiness, when all of this craziness and chaos settles, it feels like there's nowhere to go. And it feels like we are only halfway through this program and there's 6 months left. And how am I going to be able to keep living with these people? And once you pass through this phase, you are in true community when you're speaking your genuine needs and setting boundaries and taking space. And in this experience, I have this sort of vision of a house plant. And when you think of what a plant needs, you think of water, sun, soil. But that's an oversimplification. When you can outgrow the space that you're in and need to be repotted. You can overwater a plant so that it's rotting from the inside out. And there was this moment when one of my housemates was drilling holes in a bucket. And it had me thinking about, when people think of a bucket, you think of this object that holds water. But when we saw this, we needed it to do something else. We had to change the function of this object to serve us so that water could pass through and irrigate and drain. And during our conflict, that's what we needed to do. We needed to drain. We needed to take space from each other. There's this instinct to latch on and be microscopic about the kind of relationships you upkeep, but really finding spirit within yourself and centering and then rejoining a group is actually much more fulfilling. And as we enter our last month, there's this pressure coming up again to like spend all this time with each other and sort of wear ourselves thin like we were at the beginning. But now we can come back and be like, hey, I am speaking my truth. I am elevating this thing that has made me feel uncomfortable. And I am not just mindlessly causing conflict, but I'm trying to better this environment for myself and most likely others. And joining QVS has been absolutely transformative in being in other communities and thinking that we were in true community. Mostly we are in pseudo community, and we are just upholding this surface level facade. And as someone who did not think that they would have a job out of college, QVS has really grounded me and centered me and allowed me to create a new and unique career path for myself in a totally unexpected way. And I also will be living with some housemates, others being a 10-minute walk away. We're talking about getting matching tattoos of a broken chair, because there's never seemed to be enough chairs for everyone. And when we did find one, they would break. And there's just all of these visual components to trying to really stick it out and sit in community with one another. So that's most of what I have to say Tiana, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tiana Lewis, pronouns she, her, hers. I am originally from Nebraska, but am currently living in Atlanta as part of the QVS program. I don't have too many Quaker connections. I didn't really know who Quakers were until I went to college. I actually went to college in Swarthmore, at Swarthmore, which is a historically Quaker school, is no longer entirely Quaker, but we still got to experience some things like meeting for business type of models of going about things. And I also had friends who did QVS, some classmates, both from Swarthmore and other Quaker schools. So that's how I heard about the program. I graduated in 2019. Yeah, TRICO, definitely. I graduated in 2019, and a fun fact about me is after I graduated, I did a different service program. I did AmeriCorps, specifically College Possible. If you're not familiar with AmeriCorps, it's sort of like the Domestic Peace Corps. It's a national organization that's federally funded and privately funded that places folks around the country and places of critical need. I love all of this TRICO love happening in the chat. Anyway, so AmeriCorps and College Possible is a college access and success program that I did. My thought behind doing a service year was that I wanted to be involved in my community, wanted to feel like I was making an impact, but also wanted to have time to grow as a person and be in an environment where I had an institution that was still supporting me. So that was my motivation. And something that I wanted to talk about today as part of my testimonial was how I moved from AmeriCorps to deciding that service year did not fulfill my needs and wanting to do QVS. So AmeriCorps / College Possible is definitely a great program, but I felt like some of the things that I wanted to learn about community, about myself, about growth, about abundance and resources, I wasn't really learning about those things while in AmeriCorps. And some of the questions that I thought I could answer through doing QVS were the following. How do I grow to be comfortable around people? How do I allow myself to ask for help? And how do I make a home out of a place? And thankfully, having now a month left in the program, I feel like I have definitely answered some of those questions for myself and grown a lot as a person. For example, growing to be comfortable around people. There's nothing like living in intentional community with 6, I think, yeah, we started with 7 people total. So with 6 other people, living in intentional community taught me how to be really vulnerable around people, not just emotionally, but physically, to share space with folks. And I feel like I grew a lot that way. How do I ask for help? I think one thing that I really wanted to address within myself was this sort of scarcity mindset. I grew up in a low income household in Nebraska and never really had a lot of resources. So one of the reasons why I chose to do AmeriCorps was because I felt like the living stipend provided by QVS wasn't enough for me. Surprisingly, by the end of AmeriCorps, I found that it wasn't really about the money. It was, at least for me, it was about the experiences that I was having. So it ended up being that I was able to sacrifice making, an incredible, I don't know, $1,000 a month instead of the stipend that I get now. And I really think QVS has helped me interrogate some of the thoughts that I had about resources and sharing within a community, both like accessing my community for monetary resources, anything from money to asking my neighbor for a spatula, or asking someone in the support committee for a space to host an event. you know, anything like that. I think I was really hiding from asking those questions as a low income person, wanting to be self-sufficient, and QVS has helped me see my community itself as something that's really abundant and full of resources, and to see all of these amazing people throughout my QVS year and also on this call tonight who are so supportive of all of the fellows and the things that we do is really incredible to see, and really a testament to the things that I wanted out of QVS. So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And I will turn it back over to our hosts.
Thank you so much, Tiana, Katie, and Christina. Oh my gosh, it was so great to hear your stories, some of your reflections. I'm especially glad that you also shared about what was hard about, and what has been hard about your experience, because this is not meant to be a walk in the park, right? This is about spiritual growth, discernment, community, exploration, and seeking, and that means that it's not always easy. It's not always straightforward, you know. But that's actually part of what makes it such a rich experience to be a part of Quaker Voluntary Service. And I felt deeply changed by my experience, and it sounds like you all have too. And I'm so grateful that you honored us with your stories. Thank you for Christina for being with us. I know you have to hop off. And I also just want to mention, you know, this was a particularly difficult year to be in this program. You know, there's so much that goes into the logistics of thinking about how do you reduce COVID exposure risk for yourself and for your community. And I just want to say just a deep gratitude to all of you for continuing to serve in the midst of very challenging circumstances. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some other details of the program. We're moving into zooming out. We've heard these amazing stories. Now we're going to look at the bigger picture of where Quaker Voluntary Service is right now, and dig into some really wonderful data that we've been able to take a look at thanks to our staff's efforts. So we can go ahead and take a look at the next slide here. We've heard about the qualitative kinds of information. Now we're going to dig into the quantitative and take a little bit of a look at what's that's looking like. So recruitment trends. The fact of the matter is that the pandemic made it really hard for us to recruit in the ways that we're used to recruiting. Usually we go to different colleges and community events and tabling and fairs and things like that. We just weren't able to do that. And so, you know, we see that our applications from 2020 to 2021 took a bit of a dip, but that is really to be expected given the fact that our usual techniques and skills around recruitment just were not possible. And 2/3 of our applicants typically hear about QVS from alumni or current year fellows, and we weren't really able to foster those connections as much as we used to. That being said, though, we're still going to start the year in 2021, 2022 with 35 fellows who are going to be placed in different site placements across our different cities. And that's so exciting. It's a really fabulous thing. Some of the main questions we're asking every time we think about recruitment is, are we reaching enough young adults each year who are applying? And how are we attracting a diverse group of applicants? And it is really heartening to see that our numbers around applicants of color and applicants who self-identify as transgender or non-binary was actually a greater proportion of applicants this year. That's really important, and it says to us that we are creating and building a more inclusive community for fellows to serve and explore spirituality and service. There are a lot of queer and trans people who do not feel comfortable affiliating and associating themselves in religious spaces. That's an especially really exciting number in that context. The other thing is that our program and Quakerism in the United States is predominantly white. And so seeing that more people of color are seeing themselves as applicants and as fellows is a really encouraging trend. You know, students and young adults go through a lot of transitions in their life. And so our recruitment strategies really have been focused on building long-term relationships with people at institutions like colleges who are there a little bit more long-term, faculty, chaplains, and spiritual centers, multicultural centers. And that's been a very effective way for us to be able to nurture some long-term relationships with the places where young people are asking themselves, what's next for me? So I think we can move on now. Yes, our alumni community. So I am a proud member of our alumni community, and as you can expect, it keeps just growing every single year. We currently have almost 230 alumni after the current year fellows graduate from the program. And that means we're really intentionally and proactively setting up structures for relationships between alumni and each other, current fellows, and the wider society of friends. And so, we see a lot of really cool statistics coming out of this. In fall of 2020, our impact report for alumni found that close to half of our alumni are active within the Religious Society of Friends in some way, shape, or form. A third end up attending graduate school after the program, and a full quarter are offered a position at their site placement for employment. I'm one of those people. I'm still working at the place that I was placed as a fellow. And then a third have worked for a Quaker organization. So we're seeing some very clear signs that we're building capacity within the Society of Friends by supporting and fostering young people in service at Quaker Voluntary Service. A lot of really exciting things. And before we actually go to the next slide, I just want to mention too, one of the major changes this year is we have a new staff position for alumni engagement. Carol Ann Ferlaudo is an alum of QVS herself, and you'll hear more from Hillary about this amazing position. So let's move on. Site placements. This is the work. This is how we're building capacity for the cities and the good work that we're doing in the cities. And it's very exciting to see that over the past close to 10 years, we've partnered with 118 nonprofits in the 5 site cities that we work in. And we hear all the time from people who are supervising Quaker Voluntary Fellows about the incredible thoughtfulness, enthusiasm, and care and stewardship that fellows bring into the work that they do. It's an amazing thing. And Claire is putting some links for alumni updates in the chat. Thank you, Claire. And that reciprocity between building capacity at site placements, but also building people's careers who are in site placement positions is really amazing. And we see that in these quotes here. I want to speak very briefly to the fact that you notice that a lot of the partnerships that we have with site placements are just for 1 year. And that can be for a variety of reasons. There's all sorts of ways that a site placement partnership can go. Sometimes it's a great experience, but the site placement realizes they need a consistent staff person for that work instead of a year-to-year fellow. Sometimes the fellow is such a good fit that they get hired to do their QVS work at that site placement for years to come. Others might have one fellow who didn't work out, and others are just not a good fit for QVS, and that's okay. It's an ongoing learning experience for us to discern which placements are the best fit. And whether or not placements continue after a year, the experiences are by and large very meaningful for fellows. And we hear feedback each year from partners that there's a real huge capacity gain at these nonprofits and that they can see this reciprocal benefit. So let's move on. The local Quaker community. So this is really an exciting thing. Since 2012, we've estimated that nearly 200 Quakers or friends have served as spiritual nurturers that foster one-on-one relationships with fellows who are serving. And 100 friends have served as members of local support committees. These are amazing groups that are in each of the 5 site cities that help to support the house with all manner of things, from cleaning it and making it really sparkle and shine before the fellows move in every year, to just bringing by food and treats and gifts and checking in to make sure that the fellows have everything that they need. It really is a kind of a safety net and a web of support for each fellow in the different cities. And that's, just an incredible connection for people. I think for a lot of folks, these local support committees are their anchor into the local Quaker community of the city in which they are serving. It's hard to really quantify the impacts on local friends, right? Because this is once again where we start to get into the real relationships and the beautiful spiritual connections that people are making with one another. But we just wanted to mention this because this is by no means a small part of what the program is all about is about fostering these kinds of connections. And we see just a lot of really amazing blossoming connections between friends and the fellows every year. And honestly, quite frankly, that's, if a fellow was not attending a Quaker meeting or church before their QVS year, but then decides like, I want to try this out, it's usually because of a sense of feeling welcomed by these local friends in each of the different cities. And so it's really hard to overstate just how wonderful that web of physical and spiritual support that local friends bring to the program. And if you're one of those people, I know there's many of you on the call here this evening, thank you so much for serving and for being a part of the Quaker Voluntary Service community. Okay, so I'm gonna pass the microphone back over to Hillary, who's gonna talk a little bit about some of the money and financials of Quaker Voluntary Service.
Thank you so much, Damon. So the biggest overview of the financials, if you only remember one thing from this piece, is we're doing really well financially. I'm really proud of Quaker Voluntary Service and the work that we've done in order to be in a really healthy place this year. To say a little bit about our expenses, our budget hovers around $1 million per year, and the cost per fellow is around $30,000. We're a national program, which means we are invested in building national infrastructure and national support for our fellows. I want to just speak to one or two of the line items that are the most important to me, or that feel the most exemplify best QVS. One is that in our budget, we have $15,000 for mental health care for fellows. It's a testament to how we welcome fellows as they are and with the needs that they have. We want to destigmatize mental health care needs and give fellows the tools to move through what is a very challenging program. Additionally, we have a program completion stipend. So this is for making the program more accessible for people from all backgrounds. Fellows work with their coordinator and with the Director of Equity and Empowerment on considering their class background and what they need upon leaving Quaker Voluntary Service. We have a sliding scale and a table and conversations, and we spend close to $25,000 per year on this program completion stipend. A new expense in the last year and a half is we increase salaries for coordinators, recognizing the ministry that coordinators bring to Quaker Voluntary Service. We definitely got feedback that continuing this during the pandemic was a bad time. And I understand that perspective. And I also think that this is even more needed now. It's important to show staff their worth at a time that is just very outside the norm. For this, we also got a really fantastic grant from a longtime donor. It's a matching gift opportunity. So that donor is offering to match up to $8,250. So if you give a gift as a new donor, or if you give an increased gift since your donation last year, it can be counted towards this match. As Damon mentioned, we've added a part-time alumni engagement coordinator to increase our investment in alumni. We want to provide a bridge from being a fellow into being an alum. And I'll speak to that a little bit more in the visioning section. We took out some of our expenses because of the pandemic. We cut a lot of travel spending, including all staff retreats and national orientation in person. We're building these expenses back into the budget, and your ongoing support allows us to ensure fellows experience intentional cross-city connections and allows staff to maintain close relationships that enable us to do our work from a grounded and faithful place. In terms of our income, we receive about half of our income from site placements. Each site placement contributes $18,000 to Quaker Voluntary Service. And even with the pandemic, sites were really excited to work with us, and we had a successful year in this income area. We're working to grow our annual fund every year with the question, how can Quakers across the country believe and invest in young adult spiritual leaders? As you'll see at the top, we have over 60 monthly and yearly meetings and churches that support QVS on an annual basis. That's 10% of our annual fund. which comes from monthly and yearly meetings and churches. 2/3 of these are outside of our program cities, which I think is really amazing and impressive. Having Quaker meetings, corporate support on an annual basis sustains our work and helps us grow our visibility as a Quaker institutional pillar. We're working on growing the number of monthly donors we have. This is a fantastic way for us to have a stable monthly income, and we can plan our budgets with more confidence. And just to note that as Quaker Voluntary Service as an organization gets a little older, grant funding is less available. And we've had longstanding and wonderful relationships with many partners and granting foundations. We also have new partnerships with granting foundations who help us start and sustain projects. And lately, grant makers are major supporters of the alumni engagement work. We've also received a number of unrestricted grants recently, which is immensely supportive and fairly unusual in the world of philanthropy, although hopefully this will change. So as you imagine, we've also learned a lot during the pandemic, and I wanted to share some of the learnings. QVS, Quaker Voluntary Service, we decided to continue our program even during the pandemic because friends like you continued to invest in us, and young adults still needed and still need a program like QVS. A lot of the last year has been about maintaining rather than creating and building something new. This may not sound fiery and exciting, but I'm really, really proud of our ability to maintain financial and spiritual health during such a challenging 15 months. I want to name a couple things we've learned about fellows and our work with fellows, about staff, about our relationships with local friends, and our national network. One thing we learned about fellows is they need more time for rejuvenation, and it's an opportunity that Quaker Voluntary Service can provide by offering rejuvenation and grace alongside providing a structure for transformation. In our equity work with fellows, we also got to grow this year. As you know, the pandemic shone a blinding light on inequity and injustice in the United States and globally. QVS has been working on equity for years with the goal of making the program accessible for everyone, not just young adults with privileged identities. So we're continuing to grow in this work as a staff and as a board. And we also look forward to partnering more with local friends and supervisors at fellows' workplaces. Fellows attend worship, they engage with Quaker community, they go to site placements where they have coworkers and constituents, and we want to be a resource for all of these networks. With staff, we learned something really obvious, which is that in-person time is vital. And even though in-person time, it can be expensive to fly people across all of our 5 cities, and it can be time consuming, we need it. And I'm grateful to get to work with such amazing coworkers. We also have
incredibly successful
one thing
business
that's very
over here. What
neat
is that?
about Quaker Voluntary Service.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh.
It's people pouring into it. And then you have these poor teenagers in harm's way.
So we have
Well,
another
it
thing
didn't
that's
work
very
there.
cool about Quaker Voluntary Service, which is that we have 7 out of 11 of our staff are alumni, and 4 out of 5 of our coordinators are alumni. 3 of our 11 board members are also alumni. So we have just an incredible number of alum involved in all areas of our work, and we get to continue to be a part of alumni's spiritual and vocational lives through being on staff with Quaker Voluntary Service. We learned with local friends, as Allison mentioned earlier, and is probably very obvious, in-person time is really important. And I'm really, really excited to be able to do this again this upcoming year and renew in-person activities. And a last piece of learning is about our national network. One understanding I'm taking away from this year is that growth isn't always the goal and that bigger isn't always better. There's a faithfulness in being the right size. Although we have heard a lot of interest over the years in expanding QVS, the 5-city network works for us right now. We have the right number of applicants for fellowship positions. We have a staff team where everyone knows one another's gifts, and we have local friends that we have real connections with. There are still a lot of places we can grow within that model. That doesn't mean we're never going to expand, but just letting you know, we're not doing that right now. So I want to speak a little bit about the vision and our visioning that we get to do these days. First, in terms of our income model, as I mentioned earlier, site placements contribute $18,000 to QVS to cover a portion of the costs of the fellow. And this upcoming year, we're working to shift site placement fees into a sliding scale model. By moving into a sliding scale model, we can continue the original vision to increase capacity for and remain accessible to community organizations. That means that we'll have some organizations that pay less than this $18,000 fee, and hopefully some will pay more. Site placement fees have been the most stable source of income over the last decade, which means we're leaning into faith that we will find a way forward. It's nice to get to work at a Quaker organization where that's the case. Speaking of stable income streams, we're growing an endowment to ensure we're sustaining our program for the long term. We started this endowment last year, and I believe Claire just put some links, or will be putting some links in about income and about the endowment. If you want to talk more about endowments or planned giving, please be in touch. We would love to talk with you. And alumni, we have referenced the alumni engagement work many times. This is a big project for us. QVS has never had a formal way of staying in touch with, staying in relationship with alumni. And so we're starting something entirely new. The alumni engagement coordinator, Carol Ann, is working with alumni on creating an alumni council, a group that will be listening and responding to alumni ideas about staying in touch with one another and with QVS. And that group will provide programming for alum and opportunities for connection. It's really exciting to get to start this new project. As a young organization, we have the opportunity to build practices and a support network that sustains young adults who go through QVS for years to come. It's an amazing, exciting opportunity that I'm excited to get to lean into. So that's my little piece. I'm excited also to get to be in some small worship sharing groups. We'll introduce a query, which we'll put here, and then also put into your small groups. When you get into your small group, into your breakout room, please introduce yourself with the friends, and you can give your name, pronouns if you'd like, where you're calling in from. Settle into worship sharing with the following query. The query is, how do you see QVS impacting the realms of social change and spirituality? So you'll be in these small groups for 15 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll have 20 minutes for question and answer. And if you have any questions that arise during your small group worship sharing, please be sure to jot them down on a piece of paper and ask them when we get back. So you're gonna head off into groups now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, or we'll be using the chat. And yeah, Hillary, if you want to help ease us out of those breakouts.
Yeah.
We got dumped out of our breakout. We're back.
You didn't have a choice. Well, we're glad to have you back in the big group. I'm sorry that you missed your small group, and that's a good feeling to be left with. I see Tom Wells has your hand raised. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Hillary. I have a very, very specific question, and it has to do with placements, site placements. As we've grown with this organization, and as the organization grows, are there areas that the national group, as you look at the Hall 5, that you'd like to see more involvement in? I mean, you know, just areas that you'd like to see us delve into. We've got a sort of a group of site placements that we're comfortable with, and we're trying to expand those so that we have backups each year. Are there areas
great
that you would like
question.
to see us go into that maybe haven't been used enough?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And just so everyone knows, Tom is in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area and serves on the local support committee there. So thank you. I have one or two thoughts, but I wonder if Damon or Allison or Claire even wants to speak to that also.
You know, I think one thing that is very exciting to me about the way that we do this work with QVS is that we leave ourselves open to continuing revelation around what is needed at a particular time, right? And so I think, you know, I see so many shifts within the nonprofit landscape just here in Portland alone, right? And I see how, you know, at a certain point in time, one group might need to take a little bit of a step back, right, and be less involved and work through things in a different way for a little while, and then another group that is brand new that maybe has a whole lot of new funding now that there's more awareness and interest in anti-racism work, that might now be ready for a Quaker Voluntary Service Fellow who wouldn't have been in a year or two ago. And so I think that that's the fact that I don't personally have a concrete answer to your question, Tom, is I think actually part of what I like about the model that we have right now, is that we leave ourselves open into thinking where are we best called to serve, and who are led to partner with and add capacity to, based on what's happening in the world.
Yeah, I like that last piece of what you said, especially Damon. I think that yeah, we definitely kind of go through phases in each city. I believe that we don't have very many organizations that are specifically around LGBTQ rights and support. I think we have one or two organizations that support people experiencing domestic violence, but that also would be a place I could imagine, organizations I could certainly imagine Quaker Voluntary Service working with. And we don't have a large number of organizations that are focused on racial justice, although I would say almost all of our organizations are really thinking about it. So thank you. And I think I saw Marty's hand up next. And I see the questions in the chat too. Thank you.
I'm very impressed with your being really, really grounded in Quaker practice and being Quaker and living like Quakers and kind of teaching the new ones to do that. And I'm wondering how that began and how you have solidified it so well. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, Quaker Voluntary Service was started by a dear friend named Christina Repoli, who is a member of Atlanta Friends Meeting. And Christina graduated from Guilford College in, I think, the early 2000s, and there wasn't a Quaker service year program. She saw the Catholic volunteer houses, she saw Mennonite voluntary service, Lutheran, and she had grown up Quaker and she wanted a Quaker opportunity for herself and for others like her. So we really started from this grounded place in Quaker spirituality and Quaker practice, and what do Quakers have that we can grow within our own tradition, and what do Quakers have to offer the wider world. Clearness committees and having peer clearness committees has been a really important part of the QVS experience. And I was thinking earlier about one of our coordinators talking about a fellow asking for a clearness committee, and that just feeling like, wow, this is what we're here for, is to be available to support young adults who are really looking for discernment. And so the Quaker spirituality, I think it was a part of that original batter that makes up QVS, and we've gotten to keep it. It's been a priority. Thanks for your question. Yeah. So I saw a question in here from Demi about how many fellows are involved in work on climate change and clean energy, eco-justice. I know of two in the Boston area. Damon mentioned one. organ physicians for social responsibility. And again, you know, we go in and out with different organizations. So we were working with an organization that was about prevention of nuclear war, but then they hired their fantastic fellow, and so they're no longer a site. So that often happens. And maybe if somebody from Minneapolis, I don't think we have any in Minneapolis right now, but if you want to add anything into the chat. And Susan Hoskins, excuse me.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in working with Claire over the last 2 years, the Friends Foundation for the Aging connected with QVS because one of our strategic goals is to engage young adults in aging services and help build, you know, find those leaders or build the skills that can be the leaders in our aging service communities going forward. A lot of people at college age and just after that think the last group they want to work with is old people. But as many of us on this call can attest, you know, we're not all in the last breaths of life in nursing home beds. And there's a lot of really wonderful work that can be done. So, you know, and when we look at the national demographics, the aging population is growing, is doubling like between now and 2050. So it's a field that has a lot of opportunity in it as well, but we sponsor one of the placements and would be happy to do more, but we understand. I mean, you know, I've learned a lot about the way that QVS works and certainly understand the need to not push an organization to function past its capacity. The other thing I wanted to say was that I've also learned, come to understand in this conversation that if you have a coordinator in a city, that coordinator has a certain number of contacts. And this whole community, this alumni community and the support groups and all, we need to play a really important role in helping make those contacts for new and different kinds of placements. Otherwise, you know, it's like what they talk about with diversity. You know, who are you going to hire? You're going to hire your friends. And guess what? They're all white, just like you are. So this is a real opportunity for all of us to help make connections, not just for fellows, but for placements. There's my pitch for tonight.
Thank you. What a good pitch. And it's been, I do really encourage you to take a look at that, at the blog post that Claire put in there. It's been a real joy to work with Friends Foundation for the Aging. And as you said, Susan, I think we've both learned a lot. I certainly feel like I've gotten to learn a lot by getting to partner with you. And I'm lucky because the fellow who works with an organization serving aging populations is in Boston. So I get to hear more regularly about how that's going. And absolutely, if you have contacts with individuals at nonprofits in any of our program cities, please let us know. There's a board member who lives outside of Minneapolis who had a contact with a Minneapolis organization, and that's been a really wonderful relationship. And let's see, I think that John Helding had his hand up.
Oh, great. Yes, I do. Thank you. Well, what a great meeting. And my question has to do with a topic you haven't brought up, which I credit you for not bringing up. You've been talking about the program, all the amazing things that have been accomplished, all the service in the world and so forth, and how financially solid QVS is. And bravo, it's lovely to have that conversation. That said, I am wondering how we are doing with our annual fund. How's QVS doing with that? And what are the opportunities right now for folks to support the program at this particular point in time with our financial gifts and resources? And everyone, I was not put on the spot to do that. This came from me.
Thank you, Damon. I mean, John, and I'm looking at Damon because I'm hoping Damon will also respond. So I can speak a little bit to our matching gift opportunity, which is that we have a generous donor, as I mentioned, who is supporting our work in paying our coordinators for their fantastic ministry and work. And so any gift that's new or that is above what you gave last year is counted towards this $8,250 goal. And I don't know, Damon, if you want to take this question about the annual fund, or if you want me to, or if we want to ask Claire to. Those are the options.
Well, you certainly know the numbers better than I do, but I do want to just say something to everybody who's tuning in this evening, is that you power QVS, period, right? Like it is the supporters of this organization, whether by giving time or by giving money or by giving both. You know, these are ways of feeding the organization. And it really is incumbent upon all of us to be able to do that together. It's a little bit like holding a very large weight. None of us can do it on our own, but together we can all help to lift up and move forward the organization, keep it sustainable, and make sure that this is a program that can serve fellows and site placements for many, many years to come. And so I really encourage all of us to feel that sense of individual responsibility that then weaves into this sense of corporate responsibility, and to think about giving financially as a really powerful way to minister to QVS. And so I hope that everyone will feel led in that way.
Thank you, Damon. And in terms of our annual fund, so this year, I think, and I did not look at the numbers right before this, I would say we're 4/5 of the way there to our goal of $320,000, so 80%, and we have about 6 weeks to go, I hope. And you are very invited to give, as Damon just said. Another way that you can support Quaker Voluntary Service is to encourage your local friends meeting or church, or to encourage your yearly meeting, quarterly meetings, to put QVS in your budget. Even if it's for $50 or $100, it makes a big difference for us, and it connects our networks and connects our relationships to one another. Anyone else have a question? One last question, maybe.
Norval had a question.
Well, I had one in mute, but it came up in our small group, and Bridget raised the question whether or not you've ever considered putting volunteers with for-profit organizations. Some of us come from a business background. We think we need Quakers in business as well as elsewhere. So I think QVS is doing such a great job, we should sprinkle them everywhere we can. So I just wondered if you'd thought about that.
Absolutely. I'm happy to turn this over to one of our board members. It has come up. It's come up a number of times, and I'm really grateful for the question. I'm especially grateful for this understanding that we are Quaker wherever we go, and we are faithful in a variety of vocations. And, you know, I'm thinking of, I don't know if all of you have listened to there's a radio piece about Quakers really were the ones who popularized a price tag for equity, that we understood that everyone should pay the same thing for the same item. And I do see fewer Quakers who are in business and who are a part of the for-profit world. It hasn't yet been a part of the nonprofits. I mean, the site placements, the site placements we work with, they've all been nonprofit so far. I think some of that is there's like the legal pieces of being a volunteer with a nonprofit and then working at a for-profit. And then there's other pieces that are question marks right now. I don't think it's ever, totally off the table. And if you want to start a service year program for people who want to go into business, I will definitely help. If anybody's led to that. Any board
I would
members?
also say, this is Kate Monahan. Hi, Norval. And I currently work at a for-profit institution. And honestly, it's thanks to QVS that I even am working at a for-profit institution. So would definitely count myself as one of the people for whom QVS has like served as a model of how I can bring my Quakerism with me wherever I go. You know, because I was able to see that model at Friends Fiduciary, where I worked for many years because of QVS, and then now in my current position. But yeah, so I would just say that I think even if the site placements aren't for profits, at least one person has you know joined the for-profit ranks, and I definitely, as someone who's on the board, you know, definitely hear you and am interested in having more people join me in the for-profit world.
And I would say that on our board, and among our alumni, working at for-profits was a topic of conversation at the alumni retreat that happened a couple of years ago. It is the idea of for-profit site placements continues to come up both on our board and outside of our board, but it's definitely an active topic of conversation, and I think I am very much with Kate on this, that we both are kind of thinking about what it means for site placements, as well as what it means for QVS to kind of open that doorway for people to work at for-profits after they leave QVS.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is such a joy. My gosh, I'm sad to have our time end in just a moment. Claire has put a bunch of different links into this chat, and we will also send these links after the event. So if you missed one of them, you can go back and you'll be able to find it in an email. And we'll also be posting a video of this onto our website. That is especially for you to share with your network. If anybody you know would be interested in learning more about Quaker Voluntary Service, send them over to the blog post that we'll have up, and share with your meeting. You know, you can just highlight the 15 or 20 minutes where our current fellows were speaking if you want to really just dig into what the impact of Quaker Voluntary Service is, or if you want to share with your church or meeting, then you can about the finances. You're welcome to move to that place in the recording. It really, I'm so grateful for you. You invest in Quaker Voluntary Service, and thus we exist. And fellows' lives are changed. They become alumni. Alumni go on to be a part of our board and our staff. They go on into the for-profit network. They go into nonprofits. And we're part of all these communities, and I'm grateful for that. If you'd like to give, again, there's a link for that in the chat, and you're very encouraged to. And again, if you make a gift that's new or larger than your gift last year, that can go towards this matching gift campaign. And mostly, I hope that we get to stay in touch. I hope we see you in the future at other events, maybe in person one day, hopefully, certainly on Zoom. There will be other opportunities for you to learn more about Quaker Voluntary Service online and in person. So thank you. Very, very glad to be in your lives, and vice versa.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you, friends. Good evening.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, Norval.
Hi.